Awesome. Well, well, well. Look who's here. It's Frank Ski. What's happening?
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Look at you, got your wine. I feel so unprepared. Somebody
Come
bring
on,
me some
man.
tequila.
You ought to
Anything.
know. Come on now. You ought to know when you talk to me how I do.
I know
Somebody
that's
should have
right.
told
I
you.
was checking out your Instagram and you had all these different wines and all these wine tastings. I was like, how come I never got invited?
Well, you are on the list now for
I
sure.
certainly appreciate it. You know what's interesting is, well, first of all, everybody knows who you are. You're like radio royalty, and as far as I can remember, not just radio, but all kinds of other things. You just get involved in so many different things. And when someone asked me to speak with you, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be talking to Frank Ski, the one and
Stop.
only. Are you
Stop.
serious?
Stop.
You know it's true. You know it's true. And
No.
I'm sure you get that all the time, don't you?
Sometimes, but I don't. I'm humble. I don't really see it that way.
Yeah, you
So
you can be humble, but you could. I mean, there's also a bit of honesty in that. I think it's okay to say that you've done a lot. I've read a ton of articles about you. Look at them bringing me my tequila, so I can be like you. Hey now,
there you
hey,
go. Hey, hey.
cheers.
Cheers.
So let's get into. First of all, let me say
Yeah.
congratulations on the new
Thank
deal.
you. Thank you.
Huge. How did that
Yeah.
even come about? I mean, I know you've been around and hip hop and in the game for a long time on the other side of radio. How did this
Yeah.
deal come about?
It's very interesting. I first got to tell you that I try to be as best I can. I try to really follow like God's like plan for my life, and I know we can get sidetracked and get put off track. And like something in my spirit told me at the end of last year to like rebuild my studio. And I haven't done music in a long time. I've done a lot of features for people like
Right.
the Wobble and things like that, and hadn't really worked on any independent music myself. And so I went ahead and built the studio. Then I got the idea that I should put out 25 years of Frank Ski, just like go back and get a lot of my old music and just put it out there because that music is kind of popular again.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and did that. And during the pandemic, it really gave me the time to be able to do it. Like sitting in the house, being quarantined, gave me all the time in the world to, go back and put all the music together and get it and pick the songs and, just reminisce about actually how much bodies of work I had done. And
Right.
so it's funny because I finished it. And then that same week that I finished it, I saw the announcement that Cardi B was going to be releasing her new song. Now,
Yes.
I had been told that she had sampled one of my songs, and and then I had already started working on, finishing the deal for her to be able to do that. So a lot of times people sample my music, and sometimes it never comes out. So I've had other people do it before, and it actually the song did not come out. And somebody like Cardi B is probably, Cardi probably records 50 songs for her album and then tries to figure out which 12 or whatever she's going to put out, right? So I
Yeah.
didn't know if the song was going to make it. And so I saw her post when she posted that, she had something coming out. And so I was anticipating whether it was going to be her using my song. And then I saw the post of her and Megan back to back, that picture for the song. And so I stayed up late that night. It was like Thursday night, right? So I stayed up late until midnight for her to drop the song. And I tuned into her, her YouTube and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm like sitting on my bed with my wife, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And then all of a sudden she was like, okay, let's see the video. And then as soon as I heard the song, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. When the beat dropped, you was like, oh, wait, wait, wait.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
it was
God. Like
crazy.
huge, huge,
So
huge. Like
so
you
the
couldn't
crazy
go
thing
anywhere
was,
without that.
yeah, so the crazy thing was the very next day, like that next day, I get a text message from a friend of mine, Jerry Clark. And Jerry says, I got a buddy that wants to talk to you named Kia Shine. He wants to know if you have a publishing deal yet. And I was like, my music has been out for a while, so I had really no reason to sign a publishing deal. And that day, I got on the phone with Sony that day. The next day, they flew from LA to Atlanta to meet with me. The next day. So by Sunday, they were in Atlanta meeting with me.
Wow.
By Monday, my phone was ringing off the hook with deals from all over the world. Like people were hitting me from all
Wow.
over the world. And it wasn't just for that song. It was like for my whole catalog.
Right.
Like people wanted to know how many songs I had and what other songs I had. And you know what's really crazy, Jasmine, is when I went back and after I was working talking to Sony, I had to put together a list of how many songs I had. And I did not realize how
How
many
many?
songs I had done. I did not. Like, there were so
Amazing.
many songs that, I mean, back in the Loop days and
Mm-hmm.
back in all the Miami bass stuff and just crazy
And see,
amount of
that's what
songs
I
that I
know
had
you
done. It was
from
crazy.
back in the Miami bass days. And I would
Yeah.
imagine now you're probably and really, I want to hear from you what that feels like to know that you've been doing this all these years, like for a minute. And now
Yeah.
all of a sudden to get a deal like this and people all over the world calling you, like, what does that feel like? Because most people would have been like, oh, the music side is gone for me. I'm good. And now it's like an explosion.
I'll tell you that very early on, I took on a mentor that became like a father to me. His name was Mike Lubin. And I used to work at a law firm. So I thought law was going to be my thing, even before radio. And I worked at this law firm and I was a clerk for Mike Lubin. And when he found out I was doing music, he like became my first manager. It was like entertaining for him, but he became like a father figure to me. So when I made my first song, um, I had made this sample that I was mixing on the radio in Baltimore, and it was a Doodoo Brown break,
Mm.
and somebody stole it. And Mike said to me, he said, don't get upset. And I said, well, I'm upset because it took me a long time to make it. Somebody stole it. He said, well, if somebody stole it, they must want it. So if they want it, make it into a record. And I said, well, I have no idea how to make a record. He said, well, people that can tell you. So go out there and research and get it done. So that was the birth of Doodoo Brown, right? But Mike Lubin always made sure that legally I was protected from all my stuff. So
Smart.
legally, I would always own my stuff and protect my stuff. And I never wanted to sell my stuff. And I wanted to keep ownership of it. And who would have thought that 28
Who would
years
have
later,
thought? But
who would
that's
have
the
thought
thing, because a
28
lot
years
of people
later?
make that mistake, because a lot of people think I want something right now, and they don't
Yeah.
understand the importance of having the patience of Job and waiting, because you never know what could happen 10 years, 28 years later, and you'll be
Yeah.
kicking yourself in the head.
What's really crazy is that now, for instance, the lawyer that helped me work this deal is so busy because the biggest commodity in the world right now, and I don't even know if people really understand this, the biggest commodity in the world right now is not oil, it's not gold, it's music.
Yeah.
And investment firms and money firms all over the world are buying catalogs. Can you
Mm.
imagine? So like just a week and a half ago, LA Reid sold his catalog. Could you imagine, like the guy that owns Whitney Houston, TLC, all that,
Wow.
sold his catalog because they're giving out hundreds of millions of dollars. Now
So
you're
what,
talking
what what
about
do you
people who,
attribute that to, though? What do you attribute to all of a sudden this huge interest in music catalogs? Is it the money? Like, what is
yes,
it?
so, what I figured is that what I've had to learn with this coming up for me is like right now, every single time that song gets used, award shows, video
Mhm.
shows, whatever, because I'm a writer of the song, I have to sign off on it, right? And the publishing side of music is so lucrative, and with the streaming, like record companies are having record breaking years with streaming because it's like really direct to consumer, and for them, it's just nothing but profit.
Right.
So the licensing and the ownership and to be able to take music and flip it 3 or 4 different ways is really lucrative, especially if you've got catalogs that people are after. And
Right.
now we're living in a generation which, I mean, it is what it is. A lot of younger producers that are producing this music, they're going to all this 90s music to get their inspiration. So they're taking all of this. If you listen to a lot of the R&B that's played on the radio, it's 90s music redone,
Yeah.
right? and they're going back and getting all this 90s music. And just imagine you're an artist that did a song like TLC or whatever in the 90s, right? And somebody is taking your song, and because they're using your music, you're getting a major piece of the ownership of that song.
Yeah.
And it's just money that keeps going again and again and again and again. And people have realized that. And now that there are companies out there that know how to monetize that and get that going, it becomes a very valuable asset.
Wow. So would you recommend then, for other people who are trying to get into the business, like what advice would you give them, especially from both the radio side and the music side? Because you have a lot of people who are definitely trying to have their feet in both worlds. Like what would you recommend to them? Because honestly, when I can remember years ago from the Doo Doo Brown, all of that. And I remember when somebody said that's Frank Ski, I was like, radio Frank Ski? Like, really? Like I was shocked because I did not know. And so when I found out, I was like, wow, what a smart move. But then of course I read your story and I read how all of that came about. So what advice would you give to somebody who was trying to do the same thing?
What I tell people is that now we're living in a different time, right? So creating original bodies of work is the value. Creating original music is the value, right? So my son, who is 20, is a much better producer than I am. Like he's just so dope, and he also plays instruments, and he's a top trumpet player, and he's just very artistic, right? And I never had that. So whenever I did my music, I had to pay musicians to come in
and do it.
Play pieces where he could do it all himself. And I told him, I said, dude, you don't need the sample. You can create new stuff. So it's so crazy that now my son, I just talked to him. He was like, yeah, I went in the studio day before yesterday and I'm just getting out. I said, you've been in the studio for a day and a half? And he was like, yeah, I took some naps. And I mean, who are you working for? And he's naming this person and that person, because being able to read music, hear music, and play music is a vital asset. There's not a lot of people, Jasmine, that can do that now. Music programs are taken out of school. It's not like, in our day where everybody could play an instrument, right? These kids don't know how to play instruments. They can play a keyboard and they can emulate an instrument and they can get a sound, but it's nothing like the real sound to be able to actually play and understand. Like I'll sit in a session with him and I'm like, what do you think about that? He's like, oh, she's singing off key. I said, what do you mean she's singing off key? Oh, she's in the da-da-da and that's in the da-da-da. And matter of fact, that right there needs to change. And that needs like that's, I mean, back in my day, it was so really about the beat for me.
I think that's so important because I'll tell you, I am not a musician. I can't play, I can't sing, but I have a good ear. But the thing that irritates me is I listen to people in and around this business who say, yeah, that's my song, or I create, or, I'm a producer. And really all they're doing is taking samples of other people's work. And I'm like, well, what did you do? And I don't know if we can attribute that to with the way social media is. And I think it has really molded us to lose a sense of attentiveness, a sense of let me pay attention for longer than 60 seconds, which is typically how much time you have on social media to really kind of make an impact. And so I think it is in many ways, as good as it is for us, I think in some ways it has stifled our creativity because you don't really think about let me learn how to play this guitar. Let me learn how to play this horn, because really I can just go in the bathroom, take some beats from somebody over here, someone over here. And now I've created a song that may be popular for, I don't know, a couple of months, and then we'll be on to the next thing.
What's interesting is one of the things that Sony has me doing is they have me in the studio 2 or 3 times a week, and they have me go in with these young producers, and I walk in and they say, okay, what song are we going to work on? And they're like, play us some of your old stuff. And I'll play something and they'll be like, yeah, we want to flip that. And they'll take one of my old songs, but when they flip it, oh shit, it's like, it's like they're not just taking it and sampling it and looping it. They are flipping the beat. They are changing it. They are adding stuff to it.
Creating a whole new masterpiece.
Creating a whole new masterpiece. They just needed the inspiration to start. And I think that's where this generation is. What's interesting is, you and I could sit here and say Frankie Beverly and Maze, Before I Let Go, is probably a Black national anthem, right?
Yes.
But Beyonce knew she couldn't really recreate the original,
Right.
but she did a good job for what she did. But as the Beyonce song fades away, Frankie Beverly's song will be there forever.
Always. And will be
Because
played at every cookout, every backyard
because
barbecue, everything.
it's a difference between taking a sample and using your soul in a song. And those songs were the soul of those artists. I mean,
Yeah.
from the drummer to the keyboard player, that was their soul going into that music. And that's what makes us so great as music people.
So what do you think happened? Because I always think that there is a bit of a disconnect. For instance, I have a son who's in his 30s, and when I ask him what his favorite music, artists are and the things that he looks forward to inspiration, because he's into music too, he always references old school music. And I'm like, well, what about the music that you came up with? And he doesn't knock it, and neither do I. But I often find that people who are really into music, they always go back to the time where, you did pour your soul into it, where you were in live sessions, or where, you had people who came in and actually played the music. You had the drummer, you had the guy on the horn, you had the guy on the bass, you had those people in the studio. And for him, those are his greatest inspirations. And I often wonder, like, what happened that made us kind of, or made the next generation kind of steer away from that and go into something that was a little faster? Was it the music industry that was requesting and demanding music faster? Or was it the lack of patience from some of the artists?
I think a lot of our artists have to realize that they have to do what they love, right? So I see my son in the studio working with these new people, and I see him flipping music. Like the other day, he sent me something that they did, and they actually flipped like the Luther Vandross, the way you do, the duet. And I'm like looking at my son like, boy, you are 20 years old. What the hell do you know about some Luther Vandross, right? In my mind. But the way they did it was so dope that I'm like, okay, cool. I hear what you guys are doing. But here's the interesting thing, is that really there's another side of my son musically that is totally out of that genre. He's on to some stuff more like what The Weeknd does. You know what I mean? And if you look at somebody like The Weeknd, who has one of the top songs in the country, right? But right now, Black radio's not playing that song, And I think a lot of Black artists, they're afraid to really be who they are. Like a Prince didn't care if his song was on the radio or not. That wasn't his motivation. Now, once they caught on and he became a superstar, they begged for his stuff to be on the radio. Like from the beginning, Prince wasn't motivated by that. I think the younger generation is motivated by the attention and not the art. So at the end of the day, when you find those people that are out there that are true musicians and they really start getting back to the original, because this thing now of them sampling 90s music is they're going to come to an end. They're going to go through as much as they can. And then there's going to be somebody that's going to say, you know what, why sample and give it up? Let's just play it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that there is going to be a generation that's going to come out and do that. Unfortunately, like I said in the beginning, it's tough when you take music out of schools and kids can't read music, and instruments are so expensive and they can't afford to have one. I mean, a guitar is too expensive. A horn is very expensive. A trumpet is expensive. And some of these families, they just can't afford it. And the school is like, hand-me-down instruments, and
it's the first thing to get cut when it comes down to budgets. It's the first program they cut is the music
absolutely
program.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Let me ask you this: you talked a little bit about how Black radio won't play, or would not play the kind of music that I guess your son would do, or like The Weeknd, because I know it took a long time for urban radio to really warm up to that. What do you see in the future in terms of how a lot of the younger generation, Generation Z, and even the millennials to some extent, the way that they even view music is different? I remember a time where music was probably one of the most segregated, areas around. You got Black radio, you got country radio, you got pop, you got all of these different things. But now, just as you said, even with your son, you have people who really just love the art of music, and it sounds good, whether it's rock, whether it's country, whether it's pop. Yeah. And I look at how even in country music, how it used to be like super, super, super country, like the Waylon Jennings and the Travis Tritts. And, it was people that was, the backwoods country. And then all of a sudden, Shania Twain came along. And from that point on, everything kind of shifted. And then you saw Black artists now getting into country music, and that shift of things being, kind of crossing kind of gave a whole new look to crossover music to what we're used to. So with that in mind, how do you see the future of music? Will it always have a label? Will we always have, the urban charts and the pop charts? Or do you ever see a time that even that kind of thing will go away and people will just do music?
No, it won't. I mean, music will continue to evolve, but, and the thing about it is that kids nowadays, they don't, like, my sons don't even listen to the radio. Isn't that crazy? Like their dad's
I was about to say that
person, and they don't listen to the radio, but they know all the songs that are out. So they have their ways of getting them. They know what's out there.
Yeah.
But they know what they like, and they like what they like, and they go with what they like, and that's it.
With that in mind, though, what does that mean for people like you and I? I mean, you're gonna be fine because you got your big deal with Sony. I don't have that, but I am not oblivious to the fact that Generation Z probably may not ever listen to a radio station. And I actually saw that coming some years ago, but I was happy to see that radio has still survived. I still see that it does very well with ad sales, although a lot of that money is now going to streaming and online and the whole digital industry. But what do you think that means for radio, even when you add in syndication as a factor?
I think that, so what's happening in radio, interesting enough, the argument is still happening, but the predominant factor is radio is way over leveraged. Many years ago, at the end of the 90s, these companies paid way too much money for their radio stations. The internet came in and took a big chunk of the advertising. Now the internet is taking most of the advertising. So there's really no way these radio stations can make a profit enough to even pay back the debt. So they all become like zombie companies, right? They make enough money to stay alive, but they're not making enough money to turn a profit. So what they've decided to do is there's been a big consolidation now where a company has come in and bought XM and a big chunk of radio. And what they've been using on XM by having one station for format, they're going to, like right now on XM, there's, 2 hip hop stations, one old school R&B station, one mainstream R&B station for the whole country, right? Instead of be thousands of each, there's one for each set, right? And what they're going to do with radio is the same thing. So they've already started, and basically they're going to have a few DJs who are going to be on a whole bunch of radio stations, and it's going to be programmed nationally. That's what's going to happen. Now, the mom and pop stations are going to be the savior of radio because people still want to have conversation. People still want to talk. I did my show right before I got on with you, and I'm on my show in DC, and I said something real controversial just to, get people heated up. And
not you, Frank Ski, not you. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So basically, it was about, we were talking about, now that Joe Biden is going to win this presidency, he's going to be the president. And by the time people see this interview, he probably is going to be the president, but he owes black people.
Yes, he does.
I mean? And black people this time around is woke and conscious, and they want what they want. And if they don't get it, they black people are going to go a different way, and Trump almost had a lot of black people going because he had people like Ice Cube and everybody else, jumping on.
Well, he ended up with 20% of black men's votes. What happened there, Frank C? What happened?
Right. Exactly. So my point is saying this is that conversation, people are still going to want to have that conversation.
Right.
And satellite radio with one jock per the whole country is not going to be able to have that conversation. It's still going to be a radio type of conversation, and people still want to talk. People want to talk and listen to the consciousness of what's happening all around. So radio is going to be that again. And that's what radio always was. The reason why Joe Biden has won this election, and I said it, and I'm not afraid to say it, is Black radio gave him this election.
Absolutely.
Black radio band together. They were, not partisan to whatever. Every radio station in the city was talking about voting. Every radio station was registering people to vote. They were giving people information, and Black radio came through like heroes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that Black radio has always done that from the very beginning. When you think about, that's how, the Black community got their news.
Not to this level.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think that there was a falling off, because I think years ago when, back in the day of Black radio, that's where the information came for the community. That's how you galvanize the people around a certain cause. And then I think we took a dip. And I think, like everything that goes in a circle, we came back around. And I certainly agree with you 100%. Because of Black radio and really rallying behind Kamala Harris, and just basically trying to get Trump out of town as quickly as possible because of what he was doing to Black and brown communities. You're absolutely right. But I've always said, yes, they're going to owe us, but we got to know what we're asking for. I think everybody asking for individual pockets. You got your platinum plan over here. You got your gold plan over here. We need to figure out collectively, as best as we can, exactly what it is that we're asking for. So we have a clear ask, so that whenever, they get in position of power, we can hold their feet to the fire.
It's interesting, in San Francisco and California, which is very progressive. San Francisco, they passed a reparation. They passed the reparations. You get what I'm saying? So it's available. So if Kamala Harris and Joe Biden keep their promise, then no Black child, if they want to go to college, should ever have to pay again. You know what I mean? That's the kind of reparations I'm looking for. You know what I'm saying?
But I think that makes sense. I think we have to figure out a way to make sure we're setting ourselves up for generational wealth and not, a quick check that you might spend in a month or two.
Absolutely.
I think it has to be long term. But again, I think we have to figure out a way that we can articulate that we all agree, instead of, you have some people are saying, well, we just want a fat check. Some people are saying, well, we should have education. Some people are saying we should have more footing in the tech industry. And I think all of these things are great, but collectively, I think we've got to be clear about what it is we're asking for. And hopefully we're smart enough to say, not just for me, but for my children and their children, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves, after that money is spent, right back where we are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the truth. But I think what we have to start doing as a people is, right now, I'll give you an example. You take a community like the Jewish community, right? They are about raising up their leaders, right? So they have their kids go to special schools a lot of times that are ripened for their children to learn certain things, to become leaders in their community. It's no accident that Jewish people own the music industry. They own the legal field. They own, I can keep going.
You know go on and on. I was about to say, yes.
They own, what I'm saying? They some of the best lawyers in the world. They own access to so much, right? Now, how did that happen? It was an effort to make that happen over the long term. And I think as Black people now, I will tell you, I think we're in position now where we are looking for somebody to come forward and help lead this charge. Now, who is that person going to be? We need the street soldiers that are out there now. We need that. But there's going to be somebody that's got to step up and say, okay, I'm going to take this charge and start to get this ball rolling in that direction, so that by the time 2024 comes, we have a bigger voice, we have a bigger footprint, and we have different options. Not just the option of saying, this is what we're going to do. Because even at the end of the day, right now, the Democratic Party still gets to decide who they're putting their money behind. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
That, you know what I mean? At the end of the day,
I will tell you this: I'm highly disappointed with the Democratic Party. I want the Democrats to be a little more aggressive. I get it, they go low, we go high thing, but I think at some point, I think we really got to put our foot down and say, okay, listen, we're not going to stand for this. I understand what you're doing over here, and I think I believe in some of that 20% of Black men that went Republican. A lot of them were already there in the first place, but I think some of them kind of felt like Democrats were being a little bit of a pushover.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And
we're going to
we've got to change that. We got to change that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. Tell me about this new project that you have, that your son is a part of. I saw on your Instagram, I guess he was working on a new song called Climate Change or something like that.
It's a new album. So I have a kids foundation, and my kids foundation, we've gone to some incredible places around the world. One of the many things that we do is we've been very strong over 15 years dealing with me teaching children and young people about climate change. Again, I believe if you want to make change, you can't get somebody who's 50 to change, right? It's not going to happen.
Right.
Okay. You got to get people in high school and younger people to make the change so that when they get to be 50, they're already into that change. And that they understand what we're talking about. So we've been teaching these kids about climate change, but not just teaching them, Jasmine. Like I took the first U.S. student group to the Galapagos Islands to study and follow the footsteps of Charles Darwin and his studies in the Galapagos. We've been to the Amazon rainforest. We've been scuba diving in Belize and the Barrier Reef, and we've been up to the outskirts, up in the outback of Alaska and everything, studying this climate change. And every time I go, I'm always looking for the soundtrack that I'm going to have in my ear when I'm going, when I'm walking, like when I'm in these places. And you know what? I said, you know what? I'm going to make that soundtrack.
Right.
So the Climate Change album represents all the places we've been around the world studying climate change and the places that are being affected by climate change. So yeah.
Let me tell you something. I think that's so dope, first of all, because you have so many kids who sometimes never get the opportunity to even leave their zip code, you know? So to really be able to get out there and really understand, especially in the midst of all this foolishness of people who are saying that climate change is not real and, you know, that the earth is not getting warmer, when the science is there. And I do believe 100% that if we don't get in on this area of it, we will really do ourselves a tremendous disservice, because I do believe climate change is real. You can see it. And again, just read. Just read a little bit and you can see exactly what's going on. And if nothing else, just look at how much the world has changed in the past 5 years. When you think about the number of catastrophic events, the fact that it's been snowing in places that it's never snowed before, it's cold in places or hot in places that it's never been before, and the glaciers that are melting, like there is no other explanation to this other than climate change. And I feel as an urban community, we don't talk about it enough. And our carbon footprint, we don't talk about those things enough either.
And the worst areas that are being affected the most by climate change are Black areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
you saw where the Trump administration rolled back a lot of those policies on some of those industrial companies that are located in the hood and in our neighborhoods, right? That are affecting our kids. And you think about it long term.
Long term, yeah. So that album is called Climate Change. Before the Climate Change album comes up, I am doing the 25 years of Frank Ski, and it's going to have two versions of it. One version is going to be the old songs, and then the deluxe version of it is going to have some of my new projects on there. And then the Climate Change album will come after the new year. So just, you know,
I feel like I'm not busy enough. You out here just scraping up everything. Leave something for a sister. I got to work on something. I got an album I want to do. Now, I can't sing and I can't do any of that, but I feel like I should be working on an album or something, or taking some kids to the Galapagos Islands or something. What am I? Damn, Frank, you're too busy. You got the radio show, you're doing films and movies and all this other stuff. Is there anything you don't do?
No, but I will give you a hint about something else that's coming.
Ooh, make it juicy. What is it?
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let me. Wait, don't tell me yet. Let me take a sip of tequila.
Okay, I'll take a sip of wine too.
Yeah, then tell me. And go.
So by the end of the year, by the beginning of the year, you're going to hear me on the radio 2 different times a day in 2 different cities.
Ooh, do tell.
That's all I can say.
I was leaning in for more. Damn. I heard it first. Ooh, I can't wait. I'm excited.
If,
Can I tell you
Tom
something?
Joyner
Like,
could do it, Tom Joyner did it. He
listen,
set the footprint. I'm gonna follow it.
yeah, and you're the person to do it. I'll tell you this. I know at the beginning I said that that you're royalty. You really are. I first of all, I grew up in Ottawa, Tennessee, which is right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is right down the street from Atlanta. And
Right.
I've worked in Nashville. I've worked in Chattanooga. I've come to Atlanta to work. And I thought, why is it I've never met Frank Ski? Never. I'd heard your name. I'd read it all over every article that going way back to I don't know when. And I was like, if I ever got the opportunity, I would want to tell him that I think you will always be one of those people that will be listed as the architects of how radio is done.
Thank you.
Just the truth.
Thank you.
Just the
Thank
truth.
you. I appreciate
Absolutely. So I wish you continued success on your
Thank
musical endeavors, on your foundation, which I know is going really well, and you do wonderful things for the kids. And I would also like to say that in your upcoming projects, should you need, I don't, do background. I'm lead. You let me know what you need on a song coming up or a nice little sample. I can do some.
Yes.
I don't want to give it away right now because I'd have to charge you for that. So I'm not going to sing it for you.
Yeah,
now.
I got you. I
But
understand.
I know you could find a place for me on an album, a song, or something. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now,
You got a great voice.
I do, right? You should hear me
Yes.
sing. It's amazing. I've been told a lot of people
I
wanted me
can't
on their
wait.
projects, but I've been saving it. And I think now that you have this coming out, I think this might be the time for me to just let my guard down and let everybody hear what I got.
There you go. I hear you. Thank you so much.
Frank, I thank you so much for spending some time with me. Again,
Yes.
I consider it a privilege, and I know you're going to do great things. And I can't wait to get more information about the hint that you gave me. I know it's coming soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
thank you
take
so much,
care. We'll
Jasmine.
talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.